One, I want to tell the story of how we saved $18,000 with call tracking.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Local SEO Tactics. Jesse Dolan here with Bob Brennan. And today we're going to jump a little bit outside of the usual SEO platform. So in the previous episodes, we spent a lot of focus talking about how to design your web pages, how to get your site ranked, and a lot of the tips there. And we're going to be circling back to that in future episodes. But as we've talked, we're here to help local service businesses. So it's not just about getting your website ranked and found. You want to turn those into customers that are going to pay you money for your products and services that you're offering. So today we're going to talk about handling phone calls and some of the tools and things that we use for that.
Yeah, so this is a tools episode. So it's really tools that will help you, again, like you said, convert. And we're going to be talking primarily about call tracking and how important it is as a tool. Because, again, as a small business, you're going to spend all this time and energy to get people to ring you up, so to speak. And it's going to get handed off to your team.
Yep.
And this topic gets a little weird. When I was first looking at this product and we were first looking it over, I just felt strange because I didn't want to be the big brother, so to speak, listening to everybody's conversation.
Right.
It's a little different because when you really get into this down the road and you really understand what it costs, a lot of times we figure out our average cost per call, cost to us in raw marketing is probably anywhere from $20 to $30.
Yeah.
Well, that adds up pretty quick, and it adds up real quick if you're not converting and you're not closing.
Right.
So you kind of have a vested interest in getting this stuff down real well, and that's where these tools come in.
And we should say too, we're not talking about like pay-per-click advertising, or we're not, paying for those customers, but when you look at all the time, energy, and money that you put out there just to get those phone calls,
right,
that's a real number.
Yeah, and handing that call over to somebody in your team who doesn't realize that is kind of like handing your kid, $20 bills every day just for the heck of it, and they just think money grows on trees.
Right.
And again, I'm not trying to put your team under the bus. It's just your job as managers and leaders is to build them up, help them, help themselves, and we'll get into that probably next episode. But really, give them the tools so they can polish their craft and their trade, and ideally close a lot of these calls.
Well, I think it's important to know too that for the most part, for being a local service business, the owner or the manager isn't always the one answering the phone, almost by definition or even by nature, right? So we'd like to think that, we're the bee's knees when we answer the phone. Nobody does it better than us, but you're not going to be there for every phone call. So even if you are part of the time, or even if you're the majority, these things we're going to talk about today are still applicable because you're just not going to answer every phone call, and somebody else is going to be handling them.
Yep.
So.
And I want to talk about a lot of the mistakes I made with this tool, because this is a tool that can be used incorrectly, and when it is,
sure.
It's not good. It's not good at all, and I've made a lot of those mistakes. And really, I think as business owners, we really want to control a lot of things, and we'll give directions to our team, and they really only have two choices, and that's to either comply or defy, right? And if they're defying all the time, then you're not doing your job properly, and you're not coaching them properly to handle the call, so to speak.
Right.
So, there's a lot of good reasons why to use a call tracking program or service, and we'll hit on a couple of those. The first one I'm going to cover is to create a baseline. So a lot of times you'll launch these campaigns and you'll say, hey, are they working? And you really actually, before you launch the campaign, you need to think ahead, if you can, 30 days or so, enact the call tracking on your website or even your main number, and have it work that way to say, okay, we average 80 calls a month, and you enact some kind of marketing campaign, whether it's developing your SEO or Google AdWords or Facebook or whatever the case is, and then you can measure that metric and say, we had a Facebook campaign and we got 5 extra calls. Well, great. What did that cost you? Well, it cost us $1,000. Well, that's $200 a call.
Might not have worked very good.
Right. You better be selling some pretty good stuff to get ROI on that. So, again, creating that baseline. And then from there, really any new campaign you come up with, you want to assign this tracking number to it again, under the same guise. What's our ROI? Are we getting good ROI on it? And or, what kind of customer is calling in off this specific campaign?
Right. Could we ask you a question? Let me back up just a second.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we covered it right on the front side. What is call tracking? If nobody's using that right now, what is that? What does it even mean?
That's a good question. I'll get into that a little bit, and then I want you to jump in because
Sure.
you're more the technical guy. But net, I mean, it's really recording the calls that come in, and it can give you information such as specifically who's calling, if they have caller ID. It can give you, obviously, the length of the call, their phone number. And what's really slick about this technology is it's all recorded, and then it's put in a WAV file, and it's stored on a program. And in some cases, it's sent out to your email, so you're made aware of who's calling or what the length of the call is. Or if you have a key manager or key people on your team that need to see that, it can be sent out to them. And that's kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah.
If you can add some of the other...
No, I think that's a great overview. Some of the more technical tidbits is this number replaces the phone number on your website, right? This can be applicable to pretty much anything, but particularly we're talking this example on your website. So that's where it all starts. You have to put it out there for people to be able to call you. So whatever your current phone number is, if you got a tracking number, you're going to have to go to some kind of third-party service that's going to provision the phone number for you.
Yep.
You can usually pick whatever area code you want or an 800 number. Usually you're going to pick whatever area code you're in and find a number that's, similar or depending on how your metropolitan area is laid out. Up in the Twin Cities here, we have 4 basically area codes that define our area. And depending on which area code you're using, we kind of know your southwest, northeast corner of the metro and things like that. So you can put some logic into it for that. And you replace that phone number on your website with this tracking phone number. And then whenever somebody calls that number, you can forward it to wherever you want, right? So you can still have these calls coming to your main receptionist desk if you have one, or wherever the calls are going. That doesn't change. All that really changes to have a tracking number is the number that the customers are calling in on. So after that, the service that you're using to provision this call tracking number and provide the tracking services does all the work, which we're going to dive right back into those here. But that's all we're talking about is getting a number from a third-party service to replace an existing number that you're already using. Or, as Bob said, if you're going to try out a campaign, this is a dumb example, but maybe just on your business cards. You want a different number to see who's calling off of the business cards we hand out. You could put a tracking number on your business card and use it for that. So it's really wherever you want to use it is up to you, but that's in the nuts and bolts is it's just a different phone number to replace an existing number or a new one. And then all the features kind of take over from there. So
numbers too. I mean, not to get too far in the weeds, but you can get additional numbers to put on your website to reflect, let's say a bigger company. We're in area code 651 in the Twin Cities. But let's say I wanted to represent more of Minneapolis. So 651 is more of a St. Paul phone number.
Yes.
Much smaller population, smaller city. It's kind of what Fort Worth is to Dallas, if you will.
Yep.
It's just smaller. If you want to represent a bigger company or a bigger presence in the metro, you may put multiple numbers on there just so people have the idea that, oh, hey, they have a Minneapolis office, so there's a 612 number or a Bloomington office. But you get the general idea.
Right.
And again, those are another metrics that you can measure and say, why are we getting all these 612 calls? That we may have to shift things to market more heavily towards Minneapolis versus the St. Paul area. So pretty powerful stuff that you can, it's relatively inexpensive to enact. So.
Compared to all the other things you're going to do for marketing and, again, getting to that $20, $30 or more for actual cost for a phone call, for a new phone call, the cost you're going to spend on the call tracking is insignificant. We're not going to get into pricing. There's lots of different options out there. But really, it's not expensive at all. This will be one of the cheapest things that you do. And we're covering it today. Again, this is not SEO. This is a tools topic for you. We're covering it because it's so impactful for the price that you just got to do it. You just got to do it. So.
Yeah, and we use that as a tool with our clients because we want to deliver, and basically, when we can, we try to create a baseline with them. We say, hey, here's a tracking number. We want to see before we do anything, or while we're doing the work in the background to get your web stuff going. We want to know where your baseline is.
Yep.
So we both can look each other in the eye and say, hey, we brought a value to you. You can measure those metrics.
Yep.
And that's again part of this we're going to get into here is measuring all that. So one of the things that again, call tracking will do is to help train your team up.
Yep.
So and this is again where I made a mistake. So I came from the managerial standpoint of what can I catch people doing wrong, right? And scold them or discipline them for that or whatever the case is, when I should have been coming at it from a coaching perspective to saying, okay, what can I help them do well? And more importantly, what incentives can I create for them to do well?
Sure.
Right? So nobody wants to do sit-ups. If the end goal is to run the Ironman marathon, that's a big goal. It's a huge canyon that you got to get through. If you're a good trainer, I would assume that you're going to figure out how to give that person a Scooby snack, so to speak, after they do 30 or 50 push-ups.
Right.
And say, okay, now let's move on to the next level where you're going to get this reward. And if you can give those different rewards to people or you're part of your team, then you can achieve those loftier goals. So it's a great tool for helping them answer the call correctly and helping convert.
Right.
And so if you can convert, 30 to 50%, well, now your cost per customer drops quite a bit.
And when you say for helping the team with that, that's to play the audio back, right?
Yeah.
To listen to the calls,
Yep.
What was I doing good, or, also what was I doing bad?
Yep.
Or even an example, if I handle a call good, and if we got 5 people that answer the calls on our team, you might want to play my call,
Right?
Like say, hey, look at this.
Right.
Jesse totally nailed it, or the inverse. Sorry, Jesse, I'd hate to throw you under the bus. Jesse and I talked ahead of time, so he knows I'm doing this, but this is a good example of a call gone bad, and
Yeah, be real careful there. I mean,
Right.
Nobody likes to get criticism in front of a group.
No.
So your any criticism you have, constructive criticism you have to do privately, any edification, you can do that publicly
Right.
to somebody. But it'd be very careful. It's going to take a while to your team is okay listening to each other's calls.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's nobody wants their faults thrown out on the table for everybody to see.
Well, not just your faults. I think we've had experience listening to your own voice played back, right?
Right.
It's always weird. Now imagine doing that in front of everybody else and with your job,
Yeah.
Being part of this. Yeah, you got to dip your toe in the water. That's a great point, because otherwise it gets a little weird.
Yeah, and I would say the best teaching happens when I answer the phone, I follow the script, I know I've done something wrong, and I let my people listen to it and say, hey, this is what you don't want to do, right? Because they know you're not an ogre or whatever the deal is.
Right.
And, so it's a great tool. And again, it can get a little creepy, like, oh, I'm listening to everything. So what I do is we develop, let's say, a new program or a new campaign, and it has to be scripted a certain way. Excuse me. I don't listen to every call once they've gotten the basic core down. I'll go back and I'll listen to a percentage.
Right.
And if they're fine in that percentage, great. If they're not in that percentage and there's glaring issues, then I have to go back and I have to listen to the majority of the calls just to make sure, okay, yeah, this is definitely not going the direction we need it to go. And we go back, we go over the script, or even rewrite the script. And just give your people plenty of time
Right.
to get through this, because it takes the average person a day or 3 of answering the calls to get that script dialed in.
Right.
And try not to do a script change too frequently.
Right.
I mean, we can only change so much. I mean, again, we're kind of getting into the weeds, but it's just all part of what it takes to do the scripting.
And I like what you said too, for not listening to every call. Because if you're going to listen to every single phone call, you might as well be taking the calls yourself, right? You're just literally replicating, the amount of labor time that it took to take the calls. So
Right.
Do a percentage. We usually estimate 10%, check in on 10%. If you're not finding anything wrong, then move on. If you do find something wrong, then if you want to jump up to 50 or 100% and go from there, I would say that's probably applicable if you're talking 30 to 50 calls a month. If you're getting like 20 calls a day, start out with like the 1%, right?
Yep.
If you tap into 1%, if that's cool, then you're good. If you find something bad, then bump it up to 10, and then go from there, because you don't want to mire yourself into listening to all these. You're going to get rotted with it.
Yep.
It's just going to be a negative thing that you don't want to do, and then it falls away. So,
And you really want to get your managers involved in this and have them own it.
Yeah.
And give you the feedback. And then same thing, you don't want them listening to every call. You want them to dial back to that 10%.
Yep.
And then when you do launch a new campaign, you as an owner or upper management, then you want to jump in yourselves and listen to those calls with your management team.
Right.
So they get the idea.
On the top of your calls, before you move on quick too, something that we find is pretty cool. So depending on your service and what you're selling or providing, some calls may be, 3, 5, 7 minutes, some might be longer, but you're going to see some calls might be 20 seconds, right? Or 30 or 40 seconds. You'll get to understand your business as you're listening to these. Those may be hang-ups or wrong numbers, or they could be somebody who got turned off immediately. That's something you can do as well. Pretty much every solution that's out there is going to tell you, the duration of that call, right? So if you're going to pick your 1 or your 10% you're going to listen to, you're probably going to want to look for those 2, 3, 5, or kind of whatever's your average, type of a phone call, or if it's an extremely long one. So you don't have to pick them totally at random. Like you'll kind of get to the groove of what's a good call, what's a bad call, and know what to look for. Pay those things mind, because you don't want to be picking a bunch of calls that were all just hangups and assuming that's what they all are. Get a good representation when you're doing that.
So one of the things too that call tracking will do is give you good analytics. I'm going to hand this off to you if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, you can get a lot of great information into the analytics of the calls. So whether you want to experiment with things or just get an idea of what's happening. So let's just say if you have a reception desk and maybe you got 2 people up there answering phones. Do you need them up there all the time? What are they doing? What aren't they doing? Are they busy? Not that we want to work people to death, but part of being an owner, manager, and operator is being efficient, right? And everybody pulling their weight. So all of this is logged. So you know what days of the week you get the most calls, what times of the day you get the most calls, again, the duration of those calls, how many went to voicemail, how many were answered, how many were missed. Pretty much anything you could think of as far as a trackable criteria, or a stat for that phone call is going to be provided back to you in a form of reporting. So you can look, week to week, month to month, see what things are changing, if there's seasonalities, and to be able to impact your staffing. If your busiest is from 11 o'clock to 1:30 p.m., 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., and if you're finding that a lot of calls are getting missed when you look at the reports, you need some support there. Or maybe you need a tweak to your phone system to roll over if it's not answered or things like that. So it's not just listening to the calls, it's the actual data and logging these too. You should back up for a quick second as well. Depending on your industry you're in, or even the state that you're in, your ability to record those calls, there may be some legal implications, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time, you're going to want to put a message on the front side of that call.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah. So when a customer calls you, they hear a quick message saying, and we've all heard this, you'll hear a message, this call may be recorded for training or something along those lines. Usually for most states, and again, check your laws. We're not going to go state by state here, but you got to give some kind of disclaimer that it may be recorded. Front, yep. You don't have to say that it is. You can say that it may be if you want, or however you want to soft sell it. But the customer has to have some kind of awareness usually that they're being recorded.
Right.
The software that you're using for this call tracking is going to have that built in. And usually kind of on the flip side of that coin, there's also a cool feature. In the industry, it's usually referred to as a whisper feature. And that alerts your receptionist or whoever's answering the phone of that incoming call. So just kind of walking through a call here. If I pick up the phone, if I'm a customer, I'm going to hear that this call might be recorded. It's going to ring a time or two. And if Bob's on the other end going to pick up the phone, he'll pick up the phone and my end is still ringing. But on Bob's end, he gets the announcement saying, incoming call from plumbing website. And then the call is connected. So you might get calls on your main line. You might get calls, internally, somebody dialing your extension. The cool part about getting a tracking number is it also alerts you that this is a call, from that website. So if let's just say for an emergency plumber, people that are calling are going to be an emergency. You pick up the phone and it's a call from the website. Be ready to act, kind of be on alert and ready to serve them. Don't put them on hold or things like that. So having that alert of where this call is coming from is also very important. The other cool part for the analytics is kind of more on like the reporting end of it. So we talked about the types of things that it'll pull. You can also usually set up automated reports on these. So again, if you're the manager, and as Bob said, for sure when you kick this off, you want to be listening to these calls. Maybe your team's just nailing it with A+ level of service and you back off and you don't want to be reviewing these calls all the time. You should be able to set up some kind of weekly, monthly, or whatever interval you want to spit a report out for you, to give you all that analytical data. Number of calls, time of the day. If you have multiple locations, let's say for your business, you should be able to group these and say location A, B, and C, how many calls, and kind of put all that together. the reporting in these software suites are pretty cool. So you won't be lacking in any data to make decisions on. So
yeah, and I would tell you too is what's nice about the number of calls in the analytics too is you can pretty much measure your revenue based on that. So obviously, if your number of calls go up, your revenue should be going up, and if not, well, then you need to dig into the calls and why you're not converting. Unfortunately, if the calls go down too, the revenue is going to go down to some degree. And then one other thing to throw out there too with the Whisper feature, make sure you tell your team about the Whisper feature, because when they don't know about it, they will hang up because they'll think it's some kind of a robot sales call or whatever the deal is. And we've had that happen with a lot of our clients that use their services. We'll implement a call tracking into it, and again, they're they think everybody on their team knows about it, but George was sick that day and didn't get the memo, and George is hanging up on every call, and that's not good. So
no,
you're losing money on that deal, and you want to make sure you brief your team on it.
I want to throw in there too, another quick thing that we've implemented for ourselves and other customers is kind of more of like I guess I'll call it like a hotline feature where, these calls come in from a certain number. It's just kind of regular business. If you have some kind of a hotline or a VIP number, again, to alert on that. And just to kind of, again, differentiate so you know what's coming on. If you got a receptionist sitting there answering all the calls, maybe for multiple locations or, again, for a different product or service or a hotline or some kind of VIP support, immediately triggers them to deliver that level of support without asking the customer a bunch of questions. Oh, where are you located? What are you calling about? Or things like that. So you can build a little bit of like triggering intelligence into that Whisper feature to communicate to your team, as long as they all know that it's coming and they don't hang up. Right. You can build that in to start that customer service process literally before you're even connected with that customer. So it takes a little bit of thought, but again, for that same price point, you're using all the features that come with this. It's not just about recording the calls or logging the calls. This is truly, a system and improve your customer service and your revenue at the end of the day to convert more customers.
Yep, so. It's pretty slick. And then, one of the things I like about a call tracking is to listen for opportunities.
Yeah.
So there had been times in our business when our salesperson would answer the phone and they'd be frustrated because somebody was asking for a certain service that we didn't provide. And I've used this story that a friend of mine called me asking for that same service, and he said, hey, you really should provide it. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, your competition is charging $400.
Right.
I'm like, what? And I dug into it, and it's a huge opportunity. And so, by listening to your call tracking, you can kind of see between the lines. Again, if 1 out of 5 people are calling their pizza shop asking for a vegan pizza, you might want to switch gears and get the old vegan pizza thing going. So
you're telling me businesses like change and shift, and there's dynamics that you got to be aware of what customers are asking for.
Oh yeah,
and you're also telling me that your team won't relay that verbatim if you ask them.
Well, that's a great point. That's a really good point. So another thing with the call tracking is firsthand you can hear what your customers are asking for,
right?
And you can also hear you can also see what your customer, or I'm sorry, you can see what you hear what your employees are. How can I phrase?
What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to say is you can ask your employees what the customer is asking for, but you can actually hear firsthand what they're asking for.
Yeah.
It isn't always the same, right?
Right.
Because your team members, they're doing the best they can. They may not have the vision you do for the company, but your customers are always going to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Or if you're listening for it, they'll tell you the truth.
Well, I think the example you gave, is spot on. If people are calling for a product or service you don't offer, your team may not have any clue that you want to be looking for those opportunities or that you want to expand the business or add on related products and services. So they're just saying no. And to them, it's a bit of an annoyance. Like, why do people keep calling for this? And if you ask them, so you guys got any ideas on maybe what we can upsell, what we can do? No, nothing. But if you listen to these calls and pull those out, you say, holy crap.
Right.
We got 3 people a week calling for this, this service. Let's look at expediting.
Figure it out.
Adding the expediting to our deal. Yeah. So absolutely get the voice of the customer directly. That's a little more intense. That kind of gets into that auditing, the phone calls and listening to them, not just that quick sample. Sometimes you want to take that deeper dive into it and block off maybe the better part of a day, or again, grab a beer at night and listen to them.
A bottle, not a bottle, but a glass
Well,
of
yeah,
wine.
you never know.
But yeah, that kind of just brings the guard down, and you
Yeah.
can try to listen in between the lines.
Right.
Hey everyone, jumping in the middle of the episode here for about 30 seconds. Wanted to let you know, if you like what you're hearing about this call tracking, we actually have our own solution we're going to be coming out with. At the end of the episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about that and kind of tease it. It's not ready yet. It's going to be in beta. But if you want to sign up and learn more about it, go to intrix.com/calls. Intrix.com/calls. You can get on the beta waiting list. We're going to have our own call tracking solution. It's going to be pretty sweet. All the bells and whistles that you're hearing us talk about, and some of the features that you're going to hear in the rest of the episode here. So stay tuned if you like it. Check it out again, intrix.com/calls. We'd love to have you help us test it out.
So one of the things too, you mentioned this, Jesse, is kind of a notepad feature.
Yeah, for sure. One of the really cool things I like using this for, and I always tell all of our customers that sign up for our services, which I think as everybody knows, we provide web services and web design. So we always recommend using a tracking number. One of the key things I tell people, usually, we're dealing with service businesses. People wear many hats, right? Whether you're out there in the field, maybe performing some service, or maybe you're driving around between locations or running to the bank, who knows what.
Right.
But if you're out there and you're getting a phone call, or maybe even in the back of the shop or running around, depending on your phone system, and you get a call, I think we've all been there. Hold on, let me grab a piece of paper and a pen, right? Or let me type some notes on my computer quick. When you know that this call is recorded, you just keep rolling. You can take those notes later. You don't have to stop. You don't have to pull over if you're driving. You don't have to worry about being distracted and multitasking and all that. Just stay engaged in the conversation. Keep asking questions. Anything that you know you would have needed to write down, you're already talking about it over the phone, right? Once you get back later, you're going to get that email. As soon as the phone call hangs up, the system's going to send you an email with that recording. Play it back. Take the notes then. Or, if you had an assistant, hey, look for that email coming in that just took a phone call. Shoot me over the notes on that, or put it into the system for the order, or whatever it is. But yeah, it basically acts like a notepad. It's all recorded, and you're going to get everything verbatim for exactly what they were trying to do. If you have if you're dyslexic, transpose a number wrong or something else, you can always kind of check back on that. There's a lot of cool features just in that kind of historical purpose for it.
So and then a couple other things I wanted to cover before we wrap up this topic. Basically, a couple things I want to cover real quick is there are certain industries you're going to have to be careful with this. Now, that would be anything in the medical industry that requires HIPAA regulation.
Right.
And also anything, let's say, in the legal industry, same thing there. It may actually cause people to hang up. It's like, this call will be recorded. Great. I don't want it. I don't want to. So you're going to have to understand what your industry requires there.
Yep. Let me jump in on that. Almost all of these call tracking solutions, at least the ones that we've been involved with, have the ability to turn off the actual recording. So we just gave a lot of reasons where those recordings are important, but as you're pointing out, Bob, sometimes you might not be able to actually do that. You can still utilize a service like this. There's still a lot of great analytics you can get. You can log the calls, again, time of day. You get all these activity type reports, even if you can't get that recording. And in some instances, maybe you even need to, block out the caller ID number so you can't get access to that or show that. You can mask that as well. But there's still lots of value because the cost on this is so low for everything else you're doing.
Right.
To know the times of the days, the frequencies, and the volumes. There's a lot of great indicators you can get, even if you got to skip the recording. So
indeed. And then there's some extreme cases that this comes in handy. There's times where your customers make the statement, well, I didn't tell you I wanted this,
right,
or some other statement. You've got a recording of it. Now, I don't know how well it holds up in a legal setting, but maybe just for customer service perspective and say, hey, just so you know, this is recorded. You have to be tactful about how you do it. But, there's extreme situations. We've never had to use that. I think one or two of our clients had.
It's come up,
it,
though. Yep.
And it's saved them thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So it's there for that extreme situation. But I guess I wouldn't 100% count on it holding up in a legal situation. So.
Yeah, we make no claims to your court cases.
Right.
Just to be clear.
So, and then this kind of final note I want to cover is how to work with your team with this.
Yeah.
And again, it's about developing the scripts and figuring out, what the customer is looking for and what you can give them. And between you and your team, sometimes you can develop the script together if you don't have that direction.
Yeah.
And experiment with it, over time. And again, measuring how many of these are you closing with the script.
Yep.
And then, if we change the script this way or deliver it this way, or we add on to it, does that number change? So,
do you think people need a script?
They do. I need a script. I own the show in many cases, that I've used internally, and I found myself just going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And it causes you to focus. It's forced at first because it isn't your own words and you're reading from a card or whatever the case is. But then after a while, you get comfortable with it. And when you measure and get this dialed in, I think it's huge. I think it's absolutely critical. And
Yep.
I can tell businesses that don't have a process in this area and the ones that do, and I think it's night and day.
Yep.
It's not, again, it's not hammering, people into the ground, but it's about, getting that return so everybody can make money and finding a way to reward those people, again, that follow the script consistently, give them incentives for doing that. And then, I just think it's a great tool. It's going to help you and your business tremendously.
Well, I think, back to that script part. I mean, obviously the answer is yes, you do need a script. You're not going to script out the whole conversation, but at the very least, like, to kick that off, right? For a new customer. I mean, you're not going to, if a repeat customer calls you every 3 days, you're not going to give them this spiel every single time. But if there's some kind of announcement at the front you want to make,
Yeah.
or a question you want to lead with, I mean, kind of depending on what your industry and service is, you want predictability, right? If you got 4 different people throughout the course of the week and times of the day that are answering the phones, you should have a general expectation that they're all going to handle it the same way and perform the same way, right? To, again, convert those people into customers. So your script can be as intense or as loosely outlined with bullet points as, your business is relative to, I should say, that can be as intense or as loose as your business can afford, depending on what you're selling. But you should have that expectation of consistency.
Right.
And we've definitely found internally and with all of our customers that put that sucker into a document so everybody can see it, read it, kind of be immersed with it. You're not going to, like you said, you're not going to read from it every time once you get going, right? But it's going to get you on the same page, no pun intended, as everybody else.
Right.
And saying the same thing. And that's, again, part of the overall customer experience. Just like you're going to listen to these calls and find out, what was the crap? What did you really do bad? What did you really do good? Those changes are going to be manifested into your script. So everybody just does the good, Or we found probably a good example to bring up quick is there's questions that people might always ask, right? For a auto repair business, what's your labor rate? How long is it going to take? Is there any appointments today? If you can put all that into the script on the front side, for these customers, again, that just instills that confidence. You're a professional organization. They know what you're talking about. They know what, you're going to be asking already. And that just helps them decide that you're going to be the one.
Yeah, it takes that stress down because
Right.
they're calling you for a service. Why are they calling you for a service? Because there's usually stress involved. Their car's broke, their HVAC's broke. If you can detune that stress and bring it down a notch or two,
Right.
then price actually, is actually secondary.
Sure.
And I think a well-scripted, a well-crafted script is going to do exactly that.
Yep.
So I'm gonna just kind of close with a couple of things. One, I want to tell the story of how we saved $18,000 with call tracking.
Sure.
So we were looking at a radio ad. This was probably about 6 months ago.
Yep.
We're looking at major radio stations trying to, find out what it costs for a radio ad. And like a 30-second spot, I want to say is about $150.
Yep.
Excuse me. And so
per 30 seconds.
per 30 seconds. So $150 to, let's say, $200, at least in our market.
Yep.
Other markets are going to be more and imagine less or whatever. And so they like to tell you that you're going to need to do it for 3 months to create brand awareness.
Yep.
Right? Nobody's going to buy your product or service because, you got to create that brand
They're
awareness.
not going to hear your commercial once and call. Yep.
Right. So you net that out, and that was close to $18,000. And I said, I don't have $18,000, but I'd really like to use your service. So why don't we do this? We'll create a website. We won't use our actual company name. We'll create a website with a certain name. In this case, it was 15-minute repair. Any rate, the net is 60 commercials later, we got 3 calls.
Yep.
And we had an arrangement. It was so much per call.
Yep.
Let's just say I saved a ton of money because, and I gave them the license to change how they did the ad. I go, look, you guys, it's your job to make the phone ring. You're telling me how big our market is and everything else and how great this is and how our biggest problem is going to be answering the phone. Well, when we got done, we only got 3 calls. And you know what? That saved us $18,000, I think, on the low end, so to speak. And that's the beauty of call tracking. You can assign it to any campaign, just about any campaign you want to do.
We should say, too, we wouldn't have had a problem spending $18,000 if we would have got the results that warranted that and gave the ROI. Right, for the $18,000. Who wouldn't want to rinse and repeat on something that's making money? But to throw that out there willy-nilly, hoping it'll work, is a pretty big gamble. So however you use these call tracking numbers to test, to measure, to quantify, and prove out what is and isn't working, there's lots of different ways you can apply it. That's a really good one. Like you're just saying, I think I cut you off there, but billboards, radio, I mean, anybody you can kind of pitch that kind of concept to.
You bet. I love it when salespeople come in, trying to sell me something as far as a marketing deal. I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm all over it. I'll tell you what do you think, what do you think each call is going to cost me? And they kind of look at you blank. It's like, well, what do you think it should cost me? And you come up with a number. And it's like, great. I tell you what, put that billboard up, put this phone number up there, and I'll give you $30 for every call or $100 for every call. And they get real quiet and leave.
Right.
So, I mean, that's the world we live in. Everything can be measured. Every piece of data that's out there can be measured. So, do you want to talk about a little bit about our product that we're going to be developing?
Yeah. So we've used, I don't know, half a dozen different call tracking software solutions, over the last decade, and really kind of fine-tuned what we do and don't like about them. Tried pretty much all the major ones if you Google it. So we're coming up with our own solution.
Yeah.
It's going to have some pretty cool features, kind of taking all the best and incorporating that, taking all the stuff that's kind of excess that we personally don't use and the most of our customers don't use, and not really worrying about that as far as a feature list, and trying to bring something that's easy, looks good, not complicated. If you want to sign up for a service like this, you don't want to become an expert in call tracking software management, right? No. You just want to listen to the calls. You want to have a dashboard and run some cool reports that look good and communicate the information to you. So that's kind of our goal, is to give some, very powerful features, right? And we'll talk more about that probably when it is actually released coming up. We'll dive into it in a future episode. Still fine-tuning some stuff under the hood right now. If anybody out there is interested, we're going to be offering kind of a free beta trial to check it out and see what it's all about. I'll tell you what we'll probably do, because we don't have anything ready. Kind of put me on the spot real quick. I'll cut in a link at the end of this in post-production, and I'll tell you guys, where to go, what website to go to sign up. We definitely want to get some people on board for some beta testing to help us prove it out. Is it working? Is it good? Is there any bugs in it before we fully launch it? So if anybody's interested in getting a good deal on some call tracking software, how you want to roll it out, definitely check out at the end of the show here. And stay tuned on that. So it's good to bring up.
And I just want to thank all you guys for listening. I'm really shocked and surprised how many people are listening to us, and it's starting to grow literally all over the country and out of country to some degree.
Yep.
I just want to share a quick conversation I had over the weekend with Haji from Atlanta.
Yeah.
And it's really neat to connect with you out there. He sent us an email, and Haji's a business owner. He owns a pizza place in Atlanta. And it's just neat connecting with other other business owners. They have the same challenges, we all have.
Yep.
And it's interesting how you just instantly connect.
Yep. When
you go through your trials and all your
struggle is real,
your struggles and stuff like that. So I'm hoping we can work with Haji down the road in some form or another and just help his business grow, because like all of us, he wants to spend more time with his family. He's got the same dreams you and I have, and he hustles. You can tell he's a hustler.
Right.
I mean, he's gonna. I know this guy works at least 14 hours a day. I bet he works closer to 16. I mean, just hitting it.
Do we got a plug for his pizza shop or website here?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Let me pull it up.
Hopefully, I'm down there. He'll hook us up with some pizza or whatever. But I think we'll be hearing a lot more from Haji, and maybe we can help him out and bring some of his progress on the show and just show everybody what we can do for him. So.
Yeah, I think it is pretty cool. And like I said, surprising this early. And we thought we'd be doing this, for 3-4 months before people would even recognize that it's out there. But I think this is our, I don't know, third or fourth episode in a row that we've had a review that'll come in at the end here for people.
Yep.
I think at the time of recording this, we're up to, 10 reviews on there, 5-star reviews too. Just surprising. We're putting this out here just to share with everybody, and people are responding and just telling us how it's impacting their lives already, which is kind of blowing us away. We hoped we might pick up a customer or two or teach people a few things and just kind of get on a soapbox. So
Yeah. That's fun.
super cool. So for all you guys, just intrix.com/iTunes. Jump on there, give us a review if you're feeling the same way. It's pretty easy to do. We really appreciate it. On one hand, of course, it helps give us exposure, and everybody else can read what you think about it. But personally, for Bob and I, it's just awesome. We're Minnesota nice, right? So
Right.
we really appreciate it. And as you guys have seen, if you pay attention at the end of the episodes, we read every single review that we're getting. We do try to do one episode here. As long as you guys keep giving them, we're going to keep reading them.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's all we got for this week. Stay tuned next week, and we'll see you then.
See ya.
Hey everyone, Jesse again. Wanted to make sure we get in a review for this week. This week we got a nice review from Hajith, and we actually mentioned him earlier in the episode. He gave us a great 5-star review right after episode 6. He says, "Straight to the point, no fluff. I came across this show while looking for some fresh information on local SEO, as I am in the process of starting a local digital marketing business here in the Atlanta area. The information is fresh and actionable content, and I hope it keeps coming. I have binged on all 6 episodes and can't wait for the next one. Don't forget to check out the website for some useful tools, including the free SEO audit. Priceless. Thanks, guys." You are absolutely right. If everybody listen, and if you haven't checked out the SEO audit yet, go on out there, intrix.com, click on the SEO audit button. It takes about 15 seconds. You can plug in any page, whatever keyword you want to be optimized for, and it's going to give you great information. It's also going to email you the PDF to your email address. So check that out. You can use it as many times as you want, completely free. I also wanted to loop back. This episode, we were talking about the call tracking. As I mentioned, kind of midway through the episode, go to intrix.com/calls. If you want to sign up for the beta, we'd love to have you help us out. Give it all a test run, see how it works, and obviously you're going to reap the rewards of it as well. So intrix.com/calls. Stay tuned in the future. It's going to be a great product. We're excited to launch that, and hopefully it's going to help you guys out.